My sister, let's call her Miranda, has always been a source of stress for me. We never got along. She's quite manipulative and tends to display narcissistic traits. The thing is, Miranda was born prematurely, which caused my parents excessive worry and care for her. Unfortunately, because of this, I often felt neglected. My parents would miss my school plays or basketball games and even forgot to pick me up from events. A particularly painful issue was always birthday gifts. For Miranda, my parents gave thoughtful, sweet things that made her happy. For me, I got books or teddy bears that I didn't even like. It was a constant reminder that my own sister overshadowed me. Dealing with my parents' unfairness was tough, but my sister took it to another level, reveling in their favoritism and using it against me. For example, once she tore up my dress while I was sleeping, just because a guy she liked asked me out instead of her. I was horrified and couldn't hold back tears because I loved that dress. When I told my parents, they scolded her, but she immediately played the victim, crying and claiming the guy liked her first, and that I was deliberately doing this because I hated her. To my horror, my parents felt sorry for her after her dramatic story and advised me to avoid guys she liked to spare her feelings. It was terribly unfair because it wasn't my fault that the guy paid attention to me. Another incident happened when I begged my parents to go to Six Flags amusement park for my birthday. However, Miranda found out and decided she wanted to go to Six Flags for her birthday too. Since her birthday was before mine, my parents agreed to her request. She didn't even ride half the attractions, and I knew she chose that place just to spite me. In the end, for my birthday, my parents just took me to a restaurant we always went to. I was very upset, but they told me there was no point in going to Six Flags twice in 1 year. As we got older, Miranda treated me even worse. She constantly made backhanded compliments like, "Your face looks better with glasses," or "You like that boy, I thought you were into girls." In my teenage years, I always tried not to stand out. Unlike me, Miranda was everyone's favorite. In public, she seemed kind and helpful, but in private, she became my worst nightmare. Sometimes she acted nice, but only when she needed something from me. Once she got what she wanted, she'd ignore or mock me again. Miranda made me feel insecure not only about my appearance, but also about the guys I dated. When I was 17, I got my first boyfriend, but Miranda managed to plant doubts in my mind about him. She said he was too handsome for me and would soon dump me anyway, so I'd better break up with him first. Whenever my boyfriend came over, Miranda would flirt with him, standing too close, touching his hands, laughing loudly and unnaturally. Of course, it made him uncomfortable. A few months after Miranda thoroughly instilled her doubts in me, I decided to break up with him. Looking back now, I realize I was wrong. He seemed like a genuinely good person. After high school, I moved to another state to study engineering in college. During holidays, I returned home, and Miranda's subtle mocking comments awaited me again. The toxic atmosphere hadn't gone anywhere. At 25, Miranda met her future husband, Dave, and 2 years later, they decided to get married. She announced her engagement, which surprised everyone since we knew she was simultaneously dating other guys. Nevertheless, we were glad she finally decided to settle down with a decent person. Either way, Miranda decided to make me her maid of honor at the wedding. My parents were thrilled that I'd be part of the event, but I felt the exact opposite. I knew the role of maid of honor wouldn't be easy, and I was right. Miranda constantly used this role to control and manipulate me. She regularly threatened to demote me or strip me of the maid of honor role if I did anything not to her liking. This made the entire wedding planning process extremely stressful. When she asked for my opinion, I always answered honestly, but every time she got angry, blamed me for everything and threw tantrums. Because of her aggressive reactions, I started staying silent to avoid accidentally saying something that could trigger another conflict. I just couldn't take her verbal abuse anymore and preferred to maintain the appearance of peace. Once over lunch, we were discussing wedding plans, and I simply asked if the maid of honor would have a special dress. just to better understand her vision. Miranda immediately started yelling, accusing me of wanting to be the center of attention. Then the conversation turned to accommodations for guests. My mom said it would be nice to book an Airbnb in advance, and I agreed. That's when my sister exploded and declared that she had already discussed it with her fiance, and they would book hotel rooms. She kept yelling at me, accusing me of lacking intelligence, and saying I should consult her first before agreeing with anyone's suggestions because I was her maid of honor and essentially worked for her. I stayed silent, trying not to escalate the situation. Then she started accusing me of being negative and in a bad mood. My mom tried to intervene, but my sister interrupted her and declared she was tired of dealing with an immature maid of honor like me, and that I needed to grow up. At that point, I just stayed quiet and waited for her to stop yelling. In the end, she decided it was time for us to go home, her to her apartment, and me back to mine. As we approached the car, she kept yelling at me for another 10 minutes in the parking lot, repeating the same things. At that moment, all I wanted was to escape somewhere far away, but my car was a 20-minute walk, so Miranda had to drive me. Finally, the wedding day arrived. The ceremony itself went relatively well. However, even there, Miranda found reasons to pick fights with me over the most trivial things. During the reception, she openly yelled at me in front of everyone, making the atmosphere tense and unpleasant. I noticed her angry glares between activities. Either she didn't like the music chosen, or thought the waiters were serving drinks incorrectly. When it was my turn to give a speech, I stood up hoping to say something warm and sincere, but Miranda gestured for me to hurry up and finish. Later, she accused me of mentioning her childhood in my speech, and deliberately trying to portray her in a bad light in front of her new family. I was devastated because everyone else seemed to like my speech. Even my parents had no complaints. The next morning, when the chaos subsided, I realized how intense the anxiety I had been living with for months was, and the cause was none other than Miranda. I finally understood that she had always been my biggest problem throughout my life. It's a pity I didn't have the courage back then to refuse to participate in that wedding, but I knew my family would have blamed me. When that nightmare ended, I could finally fully dedicate myself to my career. A few months later, I met my current boyfriend, Tom. We started dating, and a year later decided to move in together. My parents were happy for us. However, my sister expressed her dissatisfaction, saying Tom looked too nerdy and was just an ordinary computer geek. In reality, Tom worked in IT and earned 3 times more than me. Miranda didn't know that, and I didn't care. I was happy with him, and my sister's opinion didn't matter to me. One day, my life changed abruptly when at a family dinner, my sister announced she was pregnant. If you're wondering how this affected me right after that, she said she couldn't wait to see me become an aunt, because she'd really need my help during this difficult period. Her words shocked me. She was an adult about to have a child, but instead of asking for help from her husband or our parents, she somehow decided I should be the one to babysit her child. You see, I've never had kids in my life and have no experience dealing with them. I've always felt uncomfortable around children and had no desire to interact with them. I was perfectly fine with not having kids yet, so her words really scared me. At that moment, I felt cornered. I knew my sister would find a way to make me babysit her child, especially since I work remotely, and it would be convenient for her to drop the kid off at my place anytime. My sister didn't know boundaries. Whenever I tried to set any limits, my parents immediately rushed to defend her. When my sister had her first child, I occasionally looked after him. At first, it wasn't too bothersome because her husband worked the night shift, and my sister worked during the day, so I just needed to let her husband get some sleep. I was never completely alone with the child, and I started babysitting when he was already 6 months old, which was a bit easier. Unfortunately, over time, these instances stopped being rare. I was asked to babysit more and more often, and my sister constantly criticized my caregiving methods. I could be calmly working when suddenly I'd get a call from my sister or mom asking about my weekend plans. If I said I had no plans, they'd simply inform me I was going to my sister's to give her a break. That was the end of the conversation. Because of these requests, I gradually started feeling like I had a second job one that, by the way, I wasn't paid for. You'd expect my sister to at least be grateful for my help, but no, that didn't happen. Every time I returned home, she'd call our mom and complain that I did something wrong, changed a diaper incorrectly, or fed the child improperly. She nitpicked over trivial things which infuriated me because I was already doing her a favor. Now you understand how manipulative she was. My sister and I were clearly not close, and she should have been grateful that I was helping her at all. Instead, she smiled to my face, but behind my back only worsened our relationship. Eventually, I got really angry. This started affecting my mental health, and Tom noticed it too. One evening, we had an honest conversation, and I poured everything out. He convinced me to finally stand up to my family. The next time they called asking me to babysit, I flat out refused. Miranda and my mom started calling and begging me to do it for the family, but I stood my ground and told them to go to hell. I felt I had already done more than I should and didn't want anything more to do with my sister or her child. I stopped all contact with my sister. She came to my house when I didn't answer calls, but I refused to open the door. My parents also tried to make me forgive her, but they eventually gave up, realizing I wouldn't budge. I occasionally talked to my parents, but that was it. That went on for 2 years. During that time, Miranda had a second child with Dave. Last year, my mom called and told me that Miranda and Dave were getting divorced. It was quite unexpected. Although I didn't want anything to do with my sister, the news still surprised me. When I asked my mom for details, it turned out Miranda had been sleeping with her coworkers. Apparently, Dave found intimate messages on a second phone she always hid from him. He gathered evidence and filed for divorce. It caught Miranda completely off guard because Dave served her the divorce papers right away. When she tried to justify herself, he said he knew everything. She begged him to forgive her, but he left. I was shocked by this turn of events, though. Looking back now, I realized Dave was too good for her. So in a way, I'm glad he escaped that nightmare. After the divorce, Miranda had to move back in with our parents. I heard complaints from them that she partied all night and came home drunk in the mornings, reeking of alcohol. Eventually, she was fired from her job because she was constantly late. This made her drink even more. While she was out having fun, my parents were forced to take care of her children. This went on for months. Meanwhile, my life was going wonderfully. Tom and I got a dog, bought a house, and gradually moved in. We're discussing marriage, but aren't in a rush. We're confident we'll always be together, so we're just enjoying the moment. When we had a housewarming party, I had to invite my parents. Unfortunately, without my knowledge, they also brought my sister and her kids. Seeing her, I got angry but didn't want to cause a scene in front of the guests, so I stayed silent. Tom greeted them warmly and offered drinks while I glared at my parents in frustration. My dad approached me and awkwardly said he didn't want to bring Miranda, but my mom hoped we'd reconcile and thought this was the perfect moment. My sister loudly told her kids to go hug me because I was their aunt. I forced a smile as they hugged me. Then Miranda started lecturing me that I should be a more involved aunt since the kids barely knew me, and I should make more effort. I clenched my teeth to avoid saying something that would embarrass her in front of everyone. During the party, I noticed Miranda was constantly drinking wine and completely ignoring her kids. Her children were behaving terribly, chasing our dog, trying to kick it or pull its tail. They tried to sneak into our bedroom, which I had locked to keep guests out, and even managed to break a vase while playing. I was on the verge of exploding and kept looking at Miranda, expecting her to say something to her kids, but she didn't care at all. She laughed and drank carefree. When the guests wanted to tour the house, Miranda joined them. I showed everyone the rooms, and when we went out to the backyard, Miranda loudly declared that such a big house was too much for two people, and started asking loudly if I was planning to have kids. This immediately drew the attention of the other guests who looked at me curiously. I sharply shut her down, saying it was none of her business. But Miranda quickly replied that my life decisions were the whole family's business, especially since I was an aunt. My irritation was growing, but I held myself together in front of the guests. The more she drank, the more provocative her behavior became. Miranda started making inappropriate comments about my relationship with Tom, saying we were wasting time not getting married and not having kids. I felt the tension in the room, but decided to ignore her comments. Later that evening, when most of the guests had left, I decided it was time to address the situation. I pulled Miranda aside and expressed my dissatisfaction with her behavior, especially given our complicated history. As expected, Miranda took it badly. She accused me of being arrogant and ungrateful, reminding me how much time I supposedly owed her for letting me babysit her kids. My parents tried to mediate the conflict. My mom, as usual, started urging me to forgive Miranda. However, I stood my ground and asked them all to leave. After that incident, I decided I never wanted to see my sister again, or have anything to do with my mother, who constantly supported her. It seemed to me that if I stopped communicating with them, everything would get better. But yesterday morning, there was an unexpected knock at the door. When I opened it, I saw Miranda. She had a desperate look on her face. She hurriedly explained that she had a serious problem and urgently needed my help. According to her, there was an emergency at work, and she had no one else who could look after her kids. She begged me to watch them for just a few hours. I looked at the kids. They were sleepy and exhausted, and it pained me to think she woke them up so early just to bring them to me. I asked why she didn't ask our parents. Miranda said they were at our aunt's house. She even said I could check, which I did later, of course. When I suggested she ask her ex-husband, she said he was sleeping and not answering because he worked the night shift. So according to her, I was her last hope. Reluctantly, I agreed to watch the kids, and she left satisfied. Closing the door behind her, I felt both irritation and pity. I was amazed at Miranda's audacity, just dropping her kids off at my place, without warning, not considering my own plans. Despite my resentment, I decided to do my best to make the kids comfortable. We played, watched cartoons, and I even tried to engage them in drawing and other simple activities. Surprisingly, they calmed down quickly once we got to know each other better. And over time, I even started enjoying their company. By lunchtime, I realized I had no idea if the kids had any food allergies, and decided not to risk it and check with Miranda. I called her hoping for a quick answer, but she didn't pick up. I tried again, and it went to voicemail. Then I decided to ask the kids directly. I gently explained that their mom seemed very busy at work and wasn't answering calls, and carefully asked if they had any allergies or disliked any foods. The older girl, talking about food preferences, suddenly let slip that maybe her mom wasn't answering because she was busy at a wedding. I frowned and asked how she knew that. The girl hesitated and admitted she overheard Miranda discussing it with a friend on the way to my place. The pieces came together, and a wave of anger washed over me. I thanked the kids for their honesty and reassured them everything was fine. Right after that, I called my parents to get to the bottom of it. After a long argument, my mom finally admitted that Miranda had indeed gone to a wedding where kids weren't allowed. She went with her new boyfriend, who didn't even know she was a mother of two. My mom tried to justify Miranda's actions, saying men don't like women with kids, so she decided to hide their existence. But I was furious because my sister had lied to me again and manipulated me, taking advantage of my willingness to help. Then I checked Miranda's social media to confirm this. On her Instagram, there were fresh stories from the wedding. She was smiling and drinking. I shook my head in disappointment. Browsing her Instagram, I realized there wasn't a single photo of her kids. My sister, a mother of two, was actively pretending to be single and childless, erasing her own children from her public life. Later, when Miranda came back for the kids, we had a huge fight. I made it clear I didn't want to be part of her deception and warned her that if she left her kids with me like that again, I'd contact social services. Miranda was furious hearing this and started insulting me. But then Tom, who had returned from work, stepped in. He threatened to call the police, after which she left immediately. After everything that happened, I feel drained and emotionally exhausted. I'm grateful that Tom is always on my side. However, my mom and aunt contacted me again, urging me to be more understanding of a single mother's struggles and insisting I should learn to help family in tough times. So before we move on to the update and find out what happened next, I suggest writing in the comments what you think about this story. Personally, I think the author is absolutely 100% right, and she's not obligated to look after her sister's kids. Even without considering all this toxic background with her sister and parents, she's not obligated to watch the kids if she doesn't want to, in my opinion. And with this background, there's really nothing to discuss. Yes, family relationships imply some kind of help, but it's mutual help, not one-sided. And covering it up with any kind of family unity is always manipulation. Now, let's find out how things develop further. Update 1. Thank you so much to everyone for the understanding and support. I received tons of messages from strangers asking if I was okay and sharing their own stories about toxic relatives similar to my sister. After reading the comments, I concluded that my mom is also acting extremely toxically, continuing to let my sister walk all over me. It's obvious she still favors Miranda, even though she's the main problem. I'm planning to have a serious talk with my mom. I called my aunt to hear her side of the story, and it turned out my mom hadn't told her the whole truth. So I had to do it for her. When my aunt learned that Miranda lied to me, made me watch her kids, and hid from her boyfriend that she's a mother of 2, she apologized to me and promised to talk to my mom. I don't know what conversation they had, but soon my mom sent me a message reproaching me for not dragging my aunt into our personal matters and for portraying my sister in a bad light. I'm fed up with my mom making ridiculous excuses for Miranda's actions while never calling her out. Update 2. It's been 2 weeks since my last update. Despite my attempts to distance myself from Miranda, the tension in the family has only increased. My mom kept pressuring me to forgive Miranda and start participating in her life again, meaning babysitting her kids. She even started emotionally blackmailing me, saying that she and my dad are getting older and soon Miranda will be my only family left. I decided to have an honest talk with my mom and asked her to meet me alone, warning her in advance not to bring up Miranda. She agreed. We met at a quiet cafe and I hoped for an honest and calm conversation. Sitting at the table, I took a deep breath, preparing for a difficult talk. First, I said that I love her and my dad very much and want to maintain healthy relationships with them. I said I understood her concern about aging and the importance of family unity, but emphasized that my emotional well-being is just as important for maintaining normal relationships with her. I explained the enormous emotional damage Miranda's manipulations had caused me over the years, and why I needed to prioritize my mental health. My mom, clearly experiencing an internal conflict, listened as I gave examples of Miranda's toxic behavior since childhood and described how it affected my life. I shared my feelings about how often I was ignored, used, and manipulated. I hoped to convey the seriousness of the situation. Her face showed a range of emotions from guilt to realization. The conversation took an unexpected turn when, after a pause, my mom admitted that she was well aware of Miranda's manipulative nature, but chose to turn a blind eye to it for the sake of maintaining at least the appearance of family harmony. She explained that when Miranda was born prematurely, she had some health issues that terrified my mom, and she became overly protective of her. That's why she was blind to all her actions, simply grateful that her child was alive and healthy. And hearing this, I felt my heart breaking. I reminded her that I was her child too and needed her in childhood as well. I said it wasn't my fault that I was born healthy. I acknowledged how hard it must have been for her, but urged her to have an open talk with Miranda. Otherwise, her own children would resent her in the future just as I did. I emphasized that family problems can only be resolved if everyone acknowledges and discusses them openly. My mom nodded in understanding, which was a complete surprise because I didn't even hope she'd hear me. We discussed the importance of personal boundaries, and I explained to my mom that I needed personal space, so I decided to take a break from communicating with her for a while. My mom started begging me not to disappear for years, saying she loved me and regretted everything I had to go through. I assured her I didn't plan to disappear forever, but I really needed time. When my mom and I finally managed to clear things up, I felt much better. Later, my dad contacted me separately. He also acknowledged Miranda's manipulative nature and said he understood my decision. He admitted he regretted letting her behave that way for years and assured me he respected my desire to take care of my mental health. He said he was always ready to support me, which is probably the best thing a child can hear from a parent. I completely stopped contact with Miranda and even installed cameras at the front door so that if she tried something like that again, I'd have grounds to contact law enforcement. Update 3. It's been 4 months since my last update. The reason for my absence was that I decided to take a break from social media and deleted all the apps. My mental health has significantly improved. Plus, I started regularly seeing a therapist and actively working on personal growth. My relationship with Tom is still strong. Last month, he unexpectedly proposed to me during a romantic beach date. It was so sweet. He was nervous and slightly trembling when he got down on one knee and pulled out the ring. I still can't believe I'll be marrying such a wonderful person in a few months. I shared the news with my parents. Although we rarely talk, they're thrilled for me. They adore Tom. Recently, I learned that Miranda moved out of our parents' house after they finally lost patience with her constant late-night partying and coming home drunk in the mornings. She tried arguing with them, but in the end, she had no choice but to move out. My parents agreed to pay her rent for 6 months, but after that, she'll have to manage on her own. Dave pays her child support monthly, but I doubt that money will cover her personal expenses. I hope that at least for her kid's sake, she'll finally grow up and start acting responsibly. Well, that's all. I'm waiting for your opinions on the story in the comments. Personally, I think Miranda won't change and will continue her bad behavior. What about you? Thank you for watching this video to the end. Subscribe to our channel so you don't miss new videos if you haven't already. Watch our previous videos, which you'll see right here. And good luck to you. I could have been much harsher. All I want is to get out of this house and this marriage. I do regret sending the divorce papers to her workplace. That was too much. But that's one of the few things I truly regret in this situation. And don't blame my lawyer. It was entirely my call. I wanted to hit back and made a bad choice, but what's done is done. Wifey still isn't talking to me. We completely ignore each other, and if it stays that way until I move out, I'll be thrilled. A bit about my past, since I mentioned cutting off contact with my mother long before meeting Wifey. I figured I should explain why. My mother is a thieving victim playing controlling hysteric. She'd throw public tantrums, openly hated animals, and constantly tried to scam free meals at restaurants by pretending the food or service was awful. She's a liar and a thief. Her personal life is an endless string of men, and her favorite phrase drilled into me throughout childhood was, "Life's unfair." You don't have to like it. You just have to do it. I'm not asking, I'm telling. You can tell by my face. I don't care. Get the picture. No, this isn't some sob story. My childhood was poor, but I learned early to make do with little. I didn't have a father. He died of an overdose when I was very young. My mother raised me alone. I barely knew my dad, and there were no grandparents on his side. My mom's parents died when I was a kid. They seemed like good people. I don't understand how they raised a daughter like her. After they died, family ties all but vanished. Support from other relatives was rare and limited because no one wanted to deal with my mother. She kept moving us, taking me farther from them. I later learned she used me as leverage, emotionally blackmailing relatives for what she wanted. I never got close to any of them and barely talk to them now. But credit where it's due, she worked her ass off to keep a roof over our heads, even if it was just minimum wage. That meant she was gone most of the day, and after paying bills, she often spent what was left on booze. She'd tell me drunk that she never wanted a kid and hated being a mother. When she was home, she was usually drunk and made up chores to get me out of her sight. If I didn't leave, she'd kick me out day-night. Rain, heat, didn't matter. I spent a lot of time outside when she was home sometimes, even sleeping there. I built shacks nearby from junk branches and trash. They were both shelter and an escape when I wanted to stay away from her. At first, they were simple lean-tos under trees, but one day I got a better idea. I found a discarded shovel and started digging a pit in the woods near our apartment. It took weeks to build. It was my proudest achievement at the time. The hardest part was digging the pit, probably 1.5 meters deep and 2.5 meters long. I built a roof with 2 support beams, tied it with rope, secured it with screws, and covered it with layers of found plastic and plywood. I'll admit the idea wasn't entirely mine. An old classmate said he and a friend made something similar, but they had proper materials and I had trash. I piled the dug up dirt on top, making a small mound like a hobbit hole. I even planted moss and grass for camouflage. Hiding the entrance was tricky since I couldn't cover it with leaves while inside. I made a makeshift ladder to climb in and out, and the door was old plywood I dirtied up. Honestly, it was pretty cool. It didn't even leak during rain. Inside, I even set up a makeshift sink. I was about 11 and never told anyone about this fort. Unfortunately, a year later, we moved 15 kilometers away to another apartment. A few months later, I rode my bike back to check on my fort and found a hostile homeless guy living in it. I couldn't retrieve the stuff I'd stashed there and had to write it off as a loss. The new apartment wasn't near a forest, so I couldn't build another fort. As a teen, I got a tent, but rarely used it. Thankfully, as I got older, my mother started disappearing for 2 or 3 days at a time, giving me some peace. As long as I had food and something to do, I was fine. From age 7, I had no babysitters. My grandfather died around then, and my grandmother was very sick. Both were frail in their final years. I got used to being alone in a stuffy apartment with no AC and few entertainment options. My mother never had a car. We took buses unless one of her boyfriends drove us. I was basically self-sufficient by age 8, getting myself up for school, and cooking simple meals, mostly cereal and microwave dinners. I qualified for free school lunches for low-income families. My mother milked the system for everything she could. We always lived in the cheapest apartments in rough neighborhoods with no cable or internet. If I wasn't at a friend's or the library, I watched free TV channels until they got cut off or played the few DVDs or VHS tapes we had. I didn't have a gaming console until my friends' parents took pity and gave me their brother's old Nintendo 64 worth nothing by then, along with a couple of games and an ancient TV. To keep busy, I rummaged through apartment complex dumpsters for anything useful or interesting: clothes, toys, a BMX bike, a portable radio, DVDs, VHS tapes, including adult ones I had to hide well. Mostly people threw out junk, so blockbusters were rare. I occasionally found Lego sets, which were a lifesaver, and game cartridges I'd sell at a game store since I didn't have the consoles for them. I was lucky to find a couple of Nintendo 64 games, though they were dull. People threw out tons of books, but I was never much of a reader. When my mother found out I was dumpster diving, she didn't stop me. She told me to collect aluminum cans and beer bottles to recycle for cash. That became my only pocket money. I'd hit up the local dollar store for small stuff. Clothes I found that fit went through the wash, and I wore them. I taught myself to mend torn clothes, sew buttons, and patch things up from a young age. No one taught me. I didn't admit at school that I wore dumpster clothes, but my friends knew and kept quiet. People threw out decent stuff, countless great pants and shirts missing just a button. I'd sew it on and wear them. I didn't care as long as I had something to wear. I bought secondhand clothes until college, never owned a new item, even patched my socks. I also taught myself to fix bikes, which people occasionally tossed in ditches or dumpsters. That's how I got a bike and started riding to school until someone stole it because my mother wouldn't let me bring it inside. Later, a friend gave me his old bike with a chain and lock to prevent theft, and I rode it for a while. I started cooking for myself and my mother around age 9. She caught me making breakfast once and just dumped the chore on me. I didn't cook anything fancy even as I got older, spaghetti at most. When we went out, I always braced for her to make a scene. If it ended with just grumbling, I considered it a good day. We got kicked out a couple of times for her behavior. She acted like everyone owed her something. She'd pretend to know things she didn't to avoid losing arguments. She was also a thief. When we ate out, she'd swipe glasses or silverware and hide them in her bag. They'd show up in our kitchen later. In stores, she'd take 2 identical items, return one to the shelf, and slip the other into her open bag so cameras wouldn't catch it. Birthdays. Forget it, she ignored mine and hers. Since I was pretty self-sufficient, she'd say I was so productive she had more money for herself. Oddly, as I hit my teens, she suddenly got affectionate, which was creepy. When I was about 14, her boyfriend dumped her, and she spent the evening clinging to me, hugging and kissing my face, something she'd never done. It repulsed me. She started calling me baby constantly. I snapped, and we had a huge fight. She gaslit me, calling me a bad son. I told her she was a terrible mother who never supported me. She screamed at me to get out. I didn't come back for 2 days. We fought every time she called me baby until she finally stopped. At 15, I got a part-time job, and she immediately demanded I hand over my entire paycheck for rent and bills. I stood my ground, and we agreed I'd give her half. I saved the rest to escape at 18, rent a cheap place, and attend a nearby state college. I packed and left without a word to her. She quickly tracked me down and moved closer, found me on campus, and demanded I come home. I refused. She followed me to my apartment and kept showing up, bossing me around or humiliating me in front of neighbors. She even tried to get my phone number from the college. When they refused, she threw a fit, then called my workplace pretending to be my girlfriend, and got my number from a coworker who got in trouble for it, since the rules clearly stated no sharing personal info of employees. That coworker later blamed me for his punishment. He got fired a couple of months later. My mother then tried to get me fired, calling my job with complaints without even knowing what I did there. My manager shut her down after I explained the situation. I cut her out of my life completely at 21 after a major fight. I decided I'd never live with her again. Once she was gone, it was like a weight lifted. I didn't go to therapy, but many said my mother tried to make me a surrogate spouse. The term gives me chills, but most who heard my story think she got kinder when she realized I was more useful to her than she was to me. My experience scavenging in dumpsters probably blinded me to my mother-in-law's hoarding problem when I got married. I think my desire for some kind of family trapped me. My obsession with skeleton keys started in childhood. My mother once went to an antique shop with a boyfriend, and I saw a display full of old keys. He offered to buy me one, but she refused, calling it junk. I still wanted one and started collecting modern keys I found on the street, plus can openers. My mother found them and threw them out. I begged her to keep at least the can openers and barely convinced her. As an adult, I started collecting real skeleton keys, slowly at first buying one at a time from a local antique shop. After college and getting a good job, I started ordering them on eBay, and most of my collection came from there. About my shitty coworker who gave out my number. In my last update, I detailed my mother, a thoroughly awful person I'm glad to have cut off. Now about Ted, a coworker I had at a warehouse job during college. Unlike me, Ted was a full-time employee, but you wouldn't know it from his behavior. We were about the same age, Ted loved meddling in others' business, gossiping, and sniffing around. He'd spend hours in the bathroom listening to his music player just to avoid work. His first write-up was for bringing an adult magazine to work and reading it openly during a break. He thought the punishment was nonsense, calling our manager a prude, but no one backed him. His second write-up was for giving my mother my phone number. She called work pretending to be my girlfriend, and Ted gave it to her without hesitation. How did he even get it? Our manager kept everyone's numbers handy because part-time staff like me had high turnover, and he needed quick replacements. The manager wasn't a bad guy, but kept his distance. So Ted gave my mother my number, and she started harassing me. I reported it, and Ted got disciplined since the rules clearly banned sharing colleagues' info. He blamed me, saying I should have warned him. I told him if she was really my girlfriend, she'd already have my number and wouldn't need to beg a stranger for it. After that, he got rude and stopped talking to me. He was fired a couple of months later for snooping in the manager's office, where he was explicitly banned. He made a dramatic exit, yelling, "Screw you," and your job, grabbed his backpack, and stormed out. About a year later, I saw him again working on a landscaping crew nearby. I slowed my bike, saw him mowing a lawn, and he didn't recognize me. Wifey broke the silence, tried to seduce me, and is now panicking to find a new apartment. Honestly, how accurately some commenters predicted this is almost scary, but it just proves how much of a cliché she is. After about a week of silence, she cracked and started love bombing me. She tried cooking me dinner and getting me drunk. I told her during prep that I wouldn't touch her food or alcohol first, she's a terrible cook, and second, I don't trust her anymore. She made overcooked burgers. I didn't touch them or the pre-opened beers. She sobbed, saying I was cruel for not eating her food. I coldly said I just can't trust her anymore. She countered, "You're acting like I cheated on you." I said, "You basically did your mother's been more important than your husband this whole time? That's not how you build a family, putting your spouse second." She switched gears, sobbing again, begging me to stop the divorce, promising we'd go to the couples therapy I'd asked for, and that she'd never try to move her mother in. I said it was too late, she had her chance, and blew it spectacularly. Over the last 2 years, she's done nothing to improve, just kept up appearances in public. Why stay in this toxic marriage? She admitted she'd have left me if I'd done the same to her, but kept pleading we could still fix things. I just went to my office and locked the door. She didn't let up trying to seduce me outright, parading around the house in lingerie. Even my favorite kind. Just a lace apron, something she hadn't done since our honeymoon, even when I asked. She'd touch me, stroke my hair, get on her knees, trying every trick to seduce me. But I didn't budge and kept ignoring her. Then she gaslit me, saying, "What, I don't turn you on anymore?" I replied, "You used to, but not anymore. Period." She stormed off and started drinking, then puked on the kitchen floor. I wouldn't be surprised if she tried to get pregnant out of spite or set me up somehow. Now I lock my bedroom door at night and installed a hidden camera in my room. I just want out of this house, but can't yet. I need to wait for my new place to be ready. Wifey cried harder when she realized nothing was working, begging again not to go through with the divorce or move out. But I found an apartment available in early to mid-March, and now she's in full panic, needing to find a place fast. Where she goes, I honestly don't care anymore. The main thing is, I'll be free from this house soon. I'm also deliberately not telling her where I'm moving. She's tried 3 times to pry it out of me, but no luck. Once the apartment's ready, I'll start moving my stuff bit by bit. I'm taking the guest room bed since I paid for it, and it's king size, not queen. Like our bedroom one, it'll be easier to move. I've got a bad back, so a comfy bed is critical. She can take the rest of the furniture, leave it for the next tenant, or sell it. I don't care. My new apartment's a 1-bedroom. The previous tenant left it in rough shape, so it needs some fixing, but I chose it because the rent's way cheaper than this house, and it's much closer to work, so close I can walk or bike. I think I'll do that. I haven't ridden in years because wifey hates bikes. Another thing she took from me. So one of my first purchases after moving will be a bike. Edited. To explain the bike situation, wifey despises them never wanted to ride with me, and I gradually lost interest. Then she threw out my old bike without asking. I wasn't too mad since it was in bad shape, but I never bought a new one. I haven't decided yet, mountain road or fixie. To those who think they know me, huge thanks to everyone who supported me through this. Your advice and help gave me the strength to get through it. To those calling me an idiot or worse for filing for divorce or saying I'm making a huge mistake because my wife loves me and deserves another chance, shut up. None of you lived with this woman or her mother. Before the marriage, they were completely different people. You're judging me based on her recent love bombing, but she's a talented actress. She played the perfect woman for 3 years, then dropped the mask once she got me down the aisle. All her current remorse is just a performance. She doesn't love me. She loves the financial stability I provide. She loved bossing me around and spending my money. Renting this damn house was a matter of principle for her. She practically ordered me to buy all the new furniture. Her mother constantly tested what I'd do for the family, literally trying to make me buy her a new phone like it was a submission test. When I refused, she threw a tantrum, then stole and pawned my key collection to buy that damn phone, a cheap revenge attempt that backfired hard. To everyone calling me an idiot for divorcing or calling the cops over some old keys, you can shut up too. It's not just about the keys. They were the last straw. These keys aren't junk. Sure, they're not vintage jewelry, but some are worth hundreds of dollars, and sets from brands like Surge or Ren Hardware grow in value. It's a serious collection, and even if it was worth $0, it's still my property and means a lot to me. To those annoyed that I say wifey too much, I get it, but calling her my wife doesn't feel right anymore. On paper, she's still my wife, but not in reality. In real life, I never called her wifey, it's just for the internet. I might start calling her future ex instead. Wifey's not the harshest nickname people use for exes or mothers-in-law here. I may have overdone it, but if you went through what I did, you might pick something even harsher. Someone asked if I had bad relationships before. Sorry to disappoint, but no. My wife was my first everything. We met on a blind date set up by friends. She was my first girlfriend, the first person I held hands with, kissed, and slept with. She admitted to having 2 exes she'd been intimate with, but I didn't care I was in love. We moved in together after 2 years. I proposed a year later, and we married. But right after the honeymoon, her mask came off. She became demanding, controlling, always put her mother above me, and acted like a bratty schoolgirl at home. I tried talking openly about things, but got leave me alone or not now. Everything was her way or no way. Well, I finally chose no way and went my own path. For those curious about my mother-in-law's case, it's still open. Even if I wanted to drop the charges, which I don't, she sold stolen property, so we're likely heading to court in a few months. Since her arrest, she hasn't dared come near our house. I've installed more hidden cameras, one in the bedroom, where I sleep, another in the office where I spend most of my time, and I moved the living room one. I haven't cooked at home since wifey came back from the motel, mostly eating canned food or store-bought stuff like salads or fried chicken, using only disposable plastic utensils. Surprisingly, no one asked what my friends think. My best friend and his wife are fully on my side. They've seen how wifey and her mother treated me. I have other friends, guys and girls, who know the situation and support me, including former mutual friends, who stopped talking to my wife after seeing her true colors. None of them get directly involved in our mess. Some wanted to help, but I didn't want to drag them into it. Only my best friend is slightly involved. He's the one who suggested I post my story here, and he's storing my stuff until I move. My wife claims she has a couple of supporters, but I haven't seen them. They haven't contacted me, and they don't show up. My mother-in-law has no friends at all, even my wife confirms that. So she's basically her mother's only friend. My crazy mother-in-law died. I've decided to stop calling my future ex-wifey. Even that feels wrong now. From now on, I'll just say future ex. A few months ago, I anonymously reported to the authorities that my mother-in-law was a hoarder. Someone here suggested tipping off the fire department, and I did. I was angry and wanted revenge for her stealing my collection and poisoning my life. She started hoarding when my future ex was a teen. Her house was stuffed to the ceiling with rotting garbage, and crawling with rodents, I saw rats there myself. I found the right number online and called the city service. Nothing happened for weeks, but someone eventually responded and inspected her house. What they found was worse than I thought. The house was a hazard, not just to her, but to the entire neighborhood. Exposed wires, a leaking roof neglected for years, rot, black mold rats, and trash. From the outside, the house didn't look that bad. The neighborhood has lots of old houses with similar facades, so no one complained before. My future ex quickly figured out it was me. She came home and tore into me, relaying everything her mother said about the inspection and how she'd likely have to move out. It was only a matter of time before someone else reported it if I hadn't. She screamed that I was a horrible lying person. I said she was hypocritical and reminded her of all the reasons we're splitting up. I lost it and blurted out that this was the result of her enabling her mother. She tried to act like the theft of my unique 10-year collection was no big deal, that her selfishness, unilateral decisions, and bratty behavior from the start of our marriage caused this. In a marriage, decisions should be made together, but she decided for both of us without asking. So for the first time, I made a unilateral decision and reported her mother's hoard, which needed to be cleared anyway, because it was a danger to her and everyone around. I told her I was tired of swallowing everything and being the scapegoat while they walked all over me. Her mother wouldn't get anything more from me, and maybe she'd stop acting crazy once she wasn't living in a house full of rotting garbage rat droppings and damn black mold. My future ex just walked off sniffling and muttering curses under her breath. Yes, I know I went too far and stooped to their level. I made that call in anger, and once it was done, I couldn't undo it. In the end, my mother-in-law demanded her daughter cover all the cleanup and repair costs, but she simply couldn't afford it. From what I overheard, her mother went ballistic screaming for money, telling her to get it by any means, even demanding she make me pay since I snitched. My future ex said it was pointless. The house was truly in horrific condition, rotting garbage, exposed wiring, leaks, mold. It was dangerous to live there. When she tried explaining, she couldn't pay for the cleanup and repairs. Her mother attacked her like a wild animal. Hit her, scratched her face, pulled her hair. That's when it happened. My mother-in-law had a heart attack. The rage and stress must have finished her. My future ex called an ambulance right away, tried to find aspirin in the house, but when help arrived, it was too late. Her mother died. My future ex came home with a police officer, not sure why, and threw a fit screaming through the house that I was to blame for her mother's death. That's when I learned her mother had heart issues, which was why she was on disability. The officer had to step in and physically separate us. My future ex collapsed on the couch sobbing. Yes, I hated her mother with all my soul, but I didn't want her to die. I still feel heavy guilt. From the officer and my future ex, I learned what happened, but I couldn't bring myself to post about it for a while. The guilt was tearing me apart. I went silent for weeks because I needed to process it. That evening, when I found out her mother died, my future ex calmed down enough to talk more coherently with the officer, but she kept swinging between blaming herself and me. I asked why no one told me about her mother's weak heart. She screamed it wasn't my business. But now a lot made sense, those theatrical moments when her mother clutched her chest and wailed whenever she didn't get her way. Then my future ex went to the bathroom, asked the officer for a few minutes, slammed the door, and lost it. There was banging and crashing from inside. A few minutes later, she came out angry but calm, saying I needed to clean up the mess, then packed her bags and went back to the same motel, saying she'd only return for her stuff. The guilt crushed me so much I stopped functioning for days. I took leave from work due to severe stress migraines and spent 3 days on the couch with pills. But then I pulled myself together and started recovering. All my friends say you're not to blame. I didn't know, and yes, her mother was truly unhinged, but it's done, and I have to live with it now. A lot more happened. I'll cover it in the next post. Music edited. I'm back and saw over 200 comments. Thanks for all the support. It's too much to reply to everyone individually, so I'll respond here. Did I move to that apartment in March? Yes, I moved. Everything in this post happened before the move. Could I have faked all this? I wish, but this is the crap I had to deal with. Am I in therapy? Yes, for about a month, and honestly, it's helping. Some commenters turned on me, but I'm not mad. Yes, my mother-in-law had heart issues I didn't know about, and I set off the chain of events by calling the fire department. I get that hoarding is a serious mental disorder. I'm guilty of acting out of spite. I'm not a rock. I have a conscience. But on the other hand, she was a narcissist who trampled not just me, but everyone, including her own daughter. Yes, I understand how terrifying it is to lose a home, but if you don't care for it and turn it into a rotting, infested dump, you're to blame. She could only live in one room because the rest were unsafe. And you know what? About a week ago, I rode by her lot and the house was gone, just an empty plot. They must have deemed it unlivable and demolished it. To those saying, don't divorce your wife, loves you, you couldn't be more wrong. I couldn't tell if you were just naive or trolling. Some even brought up religion, saying, divorce is a sin. I don't care about your religious views on my divorce. You're not me. You don't live my life. It's like a millionaire saying, I know how hard it is to pay for gas from $1 million car. You didn't live with her or her mother. You didn't go through what I did, so your opinion isn't valid. Sorry for the post length, but there's a lot to say. This all happened months ago. I haven't posted due to burnout. So if it seems like things are moving fast, I'm just catching up on what's already done to close this chapter. My future ex admitted to my face she married me purely for financial stability. I was 100% right. She spent years conditioning me to drag me into marriage and use me as a wallet. Yes, she planned to get pregnant after I filed for divorce, but after her mother died, she stopped pretending she wanted to save our marriage. In my last post, I mentioned reporting her mother's hoard to the fire department, after which her house was deemed hazardous. She demanded my future ex fix it, but she couldn't afford it. In a rage, her mother attacked her own daughter and died of a heart attack. Only after her death did I learn she had a congenital heart condition. All this time, I was told her disability was mental. The prospect of losing the house she'd lived in for decades caused such stress her heart gave out, especially after she assaulted her daughter. The guilt still gnaws at me, but it's in the past. Her house was demolished. I don't know if my future ex inherited the lot or sold it. I can't imagine there was anything worth inheriting. The house was so bad I saw a rat scamper across the top of the junk piles. Those who said she was clearly trying to get pregnant through love bombing hit the nail on the head. A few days after she moved to the motel post her mother's death, I went to the bathroom where she'd trashed everything to clean up. The room was a mess from her breakdown, but thankfully only her personal items were broken. She'd smeared shampoo all over the wall. While cleaning, I checked the trash and found a bottle labeled fertility support. I opened it. The protective seal was torn. I Googled it over-the-counter women's fertility vitamins. Anyone can buy them. When she came for another batch of her stuff, I confronted her with it. She admitted she hoped to get pregnant to keep me from leaving, but said that was before her mother's death, and afterward she wouldn't touch me. I said I'd felt that way for a while. She just snorted. I never found out if she tried spiking my food or beer she offered then. I searched the house thoroughly and found nothing suspicious. Maybe she just wanted to get me drunk, but I'm beyond glad we didn't have a kid. I wasn't allowed at her mother's funeral. She made it clear she didn't want me there. I didn't push, but she later posted that she was mad. Almost no one from her family showed up, not even her father, and lied that I was invited but refused to come, despite screenshots of her telling me to stay away. After her mother's death, she kept living in the motel, moving her stuff bit by bit, either to storage or a friend's place. I didn't pry. Friends later said she rented a studio but hated it, feeling it was too cramped after the house. She was even seen at a local laundromat. Our former landlord agreed to leave the furniture we didn't take since the new tenants didn't mind. Many here thought she'd trashed the house out of spite, but aside from her bathroom rampage, she didn't. She refused to chip in for cleaning just to screw me over, but I didn't argue and hired a cleaning service myself. They got the house spotless, and I got my deposit back without issue. Later, I bought a used Cannondale bike and started riding again. It's mostly original, just with a replaced seat. I ride a little, once or twice a week. Max not the same enthusiasm as before, but city rides are fun. I could bike to work, but got talked out of it after hearing a friend got hit by a car while cycling, so I lost the urge. I ride for fun now. Sometimes my best friend joins me. He's got a red Mongoose MTB. I swapped his tires and patched his brakes, and we hit the bike paths. His bike has gears but is heavier. Mine's a single speed but fast, so we're evenly matched. Sure, after her mother's funeral, my future ex went nuts, bad-mouthing me on social media, with blatant lies claiming I caused her mother's death, and accusing me of physical, emotional, and financial abuse, when if anything, she was the abuser. She kept insisting my key collection was worthless, but by then many friends and mutual acquaintances knew the truth. They commented debunking her lies, and she had to delete everything. Her minions kept messaging me, most commonly saying, "You killed a sick old lady over some keys." I responded in detail, showing screenshots, including where she told me to stay away from the funeral. I regretted her death, but couldn't predict the heart attack, and her house was unlivable and dangerous. Some apologized. Most went silent. A few kept calling me a liar, so I blocked them. I contacted my future ex, warning that if she didn't stop spreading lies, I'd sue for defamation alongside the divorce. I had all the necessary screenshots from her page. She tried accusing me of blackmail but stopped posting. Later, she deleted her social media and called to blame me for everything, mockingly saying she was glad I was divorcing her, claiming I never satisfied her in bed because I was too vanilla, and regretting not going back to her ex. That stung a bit, to be honest. For clarity, she didn't cheat, though many, including friends, assumed she did. She just spent too much time with her mother. I even spoke to her ex. Her former friend, still in touch with him, gave me his number. He said he dumped her for the same reasons I'm leaving. She and her mother treated him the same way they treated me. I wasn't their first victim. He also learned her high school boyfriend before him dumped her for the same reason. I'm afraid the story doesn't end here, but the divorce is moving forward and it's not in her favor. My future ex contacted my mother. After the social media fiasco, she made a desperate last attempt at revenge by tracking down my mother, whom I haven't spoken to in years. She knew exactly why I cut her off. I'd told her what a narcissist my mother was, and what she did in the past. But she didn't care. She went to her anyway. Maybe she was looking for a new mommy. Maybe she just wanted to screw me over, or both. Either way, we all know how petty she is. My mother lived nearby. I never really left my hometown. My future ex fed her a load of exaggerated or outright fabricated stories. Soon, I got a call from an unknown number. It was my mother. Her first words, "How could you?" She didn't let me get a word in, immediately screaming that she didn't need my excuses, then launched into a furious rant based on my future ex's lies. I hung up mid-screech and blocked the number. I thought, great, the two most toxic women in my life are now teaming up. My future ex somehow found my new apartment address. I don't know how, but it doesn't matter now. The important part is she showed up with my damn mother. My mother looked, as I remember, just with gray hair, still dressed like someone denying her age, still judgmental and narcissistic. The moment she opened her mouth to yell, I snapped. I went off on both of them. I wasn't surprised my crazy mother instantly took the liar's side without hearing mine. Words just poured out of me about everything that happened. How my future ex and her mother trapped me in a sham marriage. How she admitted she tried to get pregnant to keep me. How she dragged my mother to my place to hurt me more. I looked at my future ex and said, if her grand plan assumed my mother had any power over me, she's even dumber than I thought. Eventually, the police showed up, some neighbor called. I had a security camera at my apartment door, and it recorded everything proving I didn't touch them. The cops sorted it out and escorted them away. At first they thought I was the problem. A grown man yelling at two scared women didn't look good. But they listened and saw the footage. My mother looked genuinely frightened and refused to talk to the cops. My future ex knew what would happen if she lied, so they admitted they just wanted to talk. Sure. Who knows what they'd have done without the police and my rage. No one was arrested, but I made it clear I didn't want to see either of them again. Right after I went to the station and filed an incident report to have it officially documented in case they start stalking me. One officer tried to convince me it was overkill since they just knocked on my door. He seemed almost offended I was reporting my mother and ex. I told him he didn't know these people, they're narcissists, and won't back off. After I called my best friend and told him everything, he asked if I wanted to ride bikes to clear my head. I agreed. We rode until our legs went numb. The next day, I texted my mother on the number she called from, explaining things in detail and sending screenshots as proof for 2 reasons: to avoid hearing her voice and to have everything documented for my lawyer. She said my future ex told her a completely different story where I was an abuser in every way. I told her she could keep talking to my future ex if she wanted, but I'm done with both of them. If they show up at my place again, I'll call the police. She didn't reply for days. I also sent a message to other relatives outlining the situation, asking them to pass it on in case my future ex tried whining to them. None responded, so she must have had the sense not to try. Eventually, she and my mother had a huge fight, and my mother kicked her out. My mother then texted me saying she didn't want to risk supporting her side if it meant getting dragged into another conflict, and added a half-hearted apology. I said I still want nothing to do with her, because she still justifies how she raised me. She replied that she understood, and gave a passive-aggressive good luck. I blocked her number again. As of now, my future ex still hasn't hired a divorce lawyer. She probably knows with the evidence my lawyer has she can't win. Every dumb move she makes just gives us more ammo. She's barely fighting, though there's not much to fight over, just the joint account, which I'm no longer part of, and the rented house we both left. She can't take out a loan in my name, cameras are up, and I'm not taking any more of her crap. I think she's scared of me now. Shortly before I started posting again, she moved to another state, likely for a job transfer, she notified my lawyer. She'll be back for court, so unless something else crazy happens, I won't need to post updates until the divorce. I'm divorced. I'm officially single. The divorce wrapped up a couple of weeks ago. My ex tried to drag it out and screw me over at the end, but it backfired completely. Honestly, she seems broken now. Beyond her mother being a financial and emotional burden, my ex desperately depended on her love and approval, partly because her father left the family. Blind devotion to a narcissist is exactly what they crave. So my ex made tons of mistakes after her mother's death. She tried to make my life hell again, but it turned against her. Here's what happened. Some minion of hers called me mid-August, waking me at 7 a.m. on a Sunday. I picked up out of habit, and this woman was a total diva, acting just like my mother when my ex went crying to her. She asked if it was me, I confirmed, and she gave a smug, aha, before accusing me of everything, then said, "You need Jesus." I was too groggy to react and just hung up, blocking the number. It ruined my Sunday mood. Then she came after me on social media. Big mistake, her account had her name and photo, and I screenshotted everything. I messaged her that I'd sue for harassment if she didn't back off. She instantly went silent and blocked me. I told my ex I didn't care who she's friends with, but if she kept lying and smearing my name, I'd sue. I had all the evidence. Surprisingly, she admitted fault and promised it wouldn't happen again. That's where it ended. Months ago, a commenter spooked me by pointing out the police showed up at my door too conveniently when I was yelling at my mother, and ex suggesting they might have called the cops to frame me as aggressive. Luckily, my camera footage showed they provoked me, and I didn't touch anyone. I had my lawyer dig into it, and there was no setup. It was, indeed, a neighbor who called. I still don't know who, but it didn't matter. My lawyer and I had enough evidence for the divorce. I'm still in therapy. They say I'm holding up well, considering what I went through with my mother, ex, and mother-in-law. But I have serious trust issues with women, especially new ones I might be interested in. It's fine with friends or women I've known for years, but with new potential partners, I go into avoidance mode. My therapist says my decision to never marry again is valid. It's not for everyone, but I still see new women as potential threats. I'm working on it. My ex gave up, quit her job, and moved to another state. I only saw her in person at the final court hearing. She never hired a lawyer. Maybe she knew she had no shot, or maybe she couldn't afford one. Her finances were rough as she gave most of her money to her mother. At the hearing, we learned she had debts from before our marriage I didn't know about. She admitted she hoped I'd help pay them off more like planned, to stick me with them by turning me into her doormat. But she and her mother hit my worst triggers, and I fought back. Her behavior and admissions confirm she married me solely for financial stability. In court, she mostly avoided insults and wouldn't look me in the eye. At first, she played scared and blamed me for her mother's death. I didn't deny reporting her mother's hoard, but I couldn't foresee the heart attack. The house was unlivable and dangerous for her and the neighbors. The judge was horrified by the info about the house's condition, which she couldn't even dispute. He quickly saw through her manipulation attempts, especially after seeing the stack of evidence I'd gathered. Once cornered, she stopped crying, sat up straight, and looked defeated. In a last-ditch effort to delay the divorce, she brought up my bike, probably just to jab at me. She told the judge she hated bikes and that as her now ex-husband, I should have respected that and not kept one at home, especially an old rusty one. She called my old bike a junk heap she threw out because it annoyed her. Then she turned to me and said, I should have been satisfied with the gym. The judge looked at her like she was an idiot and said the bike was irrelevant. They moved on. In the hallway right after court, she jumped up and threw out a parting shot. Hope you enjoy your bike since you chose it over a hottie like me. I said I could say a lot back, but didn't want to. I told her to stop acting like a kid. It's over. Let's both move on. She stormed out. That was the last time I saw her in person. We had no joint assets. The house was rented. Cars were in our individual names. No kids, and we earn about the same. But I had the upper hand, recorded calls, camera footage, bank statements, social media, screenshots, texts, the story with my mother, and more from my earlier posts. When she saw the evidence pile, she didn't deny anything, just spouted nonsense, before agreeing to a no-fault divorce with no alimony. We each went our separate ways. Someone here suggested I file to have her revert to her maiden name I did, and she agreed without issue. A week ago, she called me one last time, for some reason saying she still hates me with all her heart, but finally realized what her toxic mother did to her. I don't know how much to believe her, and it doesn't matter. She said she's made new friends' lives in another state and is finally living for herself. I wished her luck, and we ended neutrally, not kindly, but not hostilely. Now I'm free and hope if I have a new partner someday, she won't be like my ex. Brazen apartment roommates. I debated telling this last story after the saga with my mother-in-law and ex-wife, but since I've mentioned it so much, I might as well. It might seem like I keep attracting awful people. Maybe I did my awful mother awful ex. Her awful mother, who died before formally becoming my ex, the lousy coworker, who gave my mother my number, and the cherry on top 3 idiot roommates during college. But aside from that, I haven't seen much evil. I have good friends, a decent job, and I'm physically active. There were just periods when I was a magnet for narcissists. Hopefully, no more. During college, I lived with 3 jerks in a rundown apartment with 80s decor for 6 months. I juggled school and a part-time job, so money was tight. Funnily enough, I was the only one who could cook and clean up after myself. I wasn't big on coupons. There were only 2 decent stores nearby, a regular supermarket and a small discount store. I shopped at the latter most. I was a regular at the local thrift store too. My roommates mostly ate fast food and pre-made meals, so as you can guess, I couldn't store leftovers, they'd eat everything. We'd argue because they never cleaned, but that got sorted eventually. 2 were friends before college. The third fit right into their clique. I went to the store, bought ground beef, a jar of sauce garlic bread, pasta, and canned green beans for a side. I made a great dinner, but when I asked them to chip in as agreed, they laughed and refused, calling it a joke. When I said that wasn't cool, they claimed they were tired of me showing off with my cooking and not sharing. I flipped them off and said I'd never cook for them again. I kept my word. They tried a few times to get me to cook again, even offering to pay, but still refused to pay for that dinner. I was sure they'd pull the same stunt again. I had pride I wasn't their nanny. I didn't know their backgrounds, but they weren't used to being told no. One day, I came home from work and found all my food gone from the fridge and cabinets, and no one was home. I was livid and couldn't confront them right away, so I went to cool off. I decided to play video games, but my consoles were gone too. I lost it. I went to a neighbor in the same building who'd sold me my GameCube and asked what to do. He had a devilish idea he'd record me confronting my roommates on a digital camera for $20. I had no choice and agreed. When they finally got back, they were smug until they realized their consoles and laptops were gone too. They flipped out, threatening to beat me up. I didn't back down, saying I wanted my stuff back, or I'd never tell them where their things were. Turns out they'd bagged all my food and tossed it in the dumpster hours earlier, and hid my consoles and TV somewhere in the building before going to a party. I asked why they did it. They said they were drunk all day since it was the weekend, calling it a dumb prank. They started accusing me of overreacting. I laughed and said they were hypocritical jerks after what they pulled. They dared say I went too far. I just gave them a taste of their own medicine. One raised his fist like he'd hit me, but I pointed to the window. They looked and saw our neighbor outside recording it all. He gave me a thumbs up and bolted down the fire escape before they could do anything. I said he'd just recorded their confession bullying theft and underage drinking. I told them if they didn't fix this, I'd take the tape to the dean, and they wouldn't like it in their records. Last year, a couple of girls got kicked out of college for bullying a roommate, and drinking was another serious violation. Their faces went pale. I said I wanted my stuff back and compensation for the food the ball was in their court. They scrambled outside, came back with my consoles and discs in a trash bag, and even pulled my food from the dumpster thinking I'd take it. I refused the food. It had been in the trash for hours. I'd only take cash, plus they dropped my TV and it broke, so I wanted a replacement too. They hemmed and hawed, but asked what I wanted. I said a new TV and $60 each. They asked why that amount. I explained $50 for the trashed food, $5 for the spaghetti dinner they didn't pay for, and the rest for the guy who stood outside in the cold for 2 hours with a camera. They grudgingly pulled out their wallets and paid. They'd bragged before that their parents paid for everything, so they had the cash. Once I got the money, I told them where their stuff was. They never touched me again. One had a small flat-screen TV and gave it to me to replace the broken one. We called it even, but they avoided talking to me after. Pretty soon they started annoying each other. I must have disrupted their happy vibe. They stopped bringing alcohol to the apartment, probably scared I'd snitch. They tried bothering the guy who recorded, but he said if they touched him, he'd take the tape to the dean himself, so they shut up. When it was time to renew the lease, two of them moved out. They now hated the third guy, too. They hated me as well, but the two who left were especially vile. On the rare days we crossed paths at college, they kept their distance. The one who stayed started to improve a bit. When new roommates moved in, he warned them not to mess with me. One of the new guys was really cool. He liked cooking simple home meals. Like, me loved Nintendo and bikes. He became my best friend, and still is. We still play Mario Kart when we can, and started biking again after my divorce. For those curious where I hid their stuff, I just put it in their own suitcases in the closet. They'd never look there. They were pissed when they realized it was right under their noses the whole time. My ex called me drunk and angry because I bought an apartment. A couple of months ago, I bought a one-bedroom condo at a great price from an elderly couple moving to Arizona. Their son works with me. The place is a bit dated, but in good shape, with a surprisingly large closet that fits my bike. It's a bit farther from work than my last rental, and I had to pay to break that lease early, but the deal was too good to pass up. The neighborhood's safer, so I sometimes bike to work, though I'm wary of getting hit by a car. The rides are helping me get back in shape. I expected my narcissistic mother to reach out soon after the purchase. She always shows up when something good happens in my life. But this time, my ex beat her to it. She must have been stalking my social media, not surprising. I'd been in the new place about 3 weeks when she called one evening while I was playing a video game. I picked up on autopilot, heard it was her, and immediately turned on a call recording app, warning her I was recording. She didn't care and was clearly drunk. I've dealt with her binges before. The drunker she got, the more childish she acted. Once she got so wasted, she argued with another woman at a bar about who had what, bigger or smaller. When I dragged her home, she tried to walk into the neighbor's house. I had to haul her inside where she puked on me, and I had to clean us both up before putting her to bed. I stayed up another hour to make sure she didn't wander off, which she'd done before. One time she woke up half naked on the kitchen floor, another in the yard during rain. The worst incident I won't even describe, just know she woke up in her car with a mess. I brought a blanket to cover her, and thankfully neighbors didn't see. But that's nothing compared to what I endured in our marriage. I told her we were done and asked what she wanted. She launched into a drunken rant about me buying an apartment, whining about how her life's awful debts, she's paying a loan, a work write-up, selling her BMW to save money, now driving some junker, losing friends, her last boyfriend, dumping her a tiny apartment with lousy neighbors. Meanwhile, I've got a great place she'd kill for. I said it's got nothing to do with her. She switched to insults, saying I left her alone after causing her mother's heart attack. I reminded her she admitted in court why she married me, and that I wasn't staying in a marriage where I was just a wallet. She kept ranting, so I hung up and blocked her number. I sent the recording to my lawyer just in case. I'm done with her drama. My life's finally mine again. I'm biking, playing video games, and working on myself in therapy. I've got my keys, my freedom, and my new place. For the first time in years, I feel like I'm building something for myself, not someone else.